I thought that I didn't either.
I didn't either. I've never met
Yeah.
the man.
I thought it was great.
Sharon told me that he joined the Fish Board to learn more about affordable housing and how
Nice.
it works. So
It's awesome.
he's in an education mode. And then
Yeah,
Rick
that's great.
Fernandez was there, a new resident that I met, Kevin Wegner, who's from New Orleans. He came up to
Oh, Abby, that's the
Who was it?
that was the gentleman in the front that was the deputy director of public works in Aurora,
Oh, okay.
but lives by Josh's Pond, right?
Yeah, he has a house on Josh's Pond and he's been here for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
There were probably 10 people, 10 folks. It wasn't like a huge crowd in person, but we don't know who is tuning in virtually.
Yeah, my understanding is that there was a large contingent streaming last night.
Okay.
So,
Very thorough.
yeah, good, but
I think you covered all the nuts and bolts.
good. So legislation. The big news really is that the state budget coming out of the Senate is, and it's just so crazy to talk in these numbers, but almost 800 million more than was spent last year. So it's up to 37.2 billion after adding that in. Now it's again back to kind of the ongoing sausage making of how do they determine again, and when you only do 1 year at a time, building in those one-time dollars, and there are a significant portion of this budget that is based on one-time dollars. So it's fascinating in that OSPB and Ledge Council with their financial forecasts that came out in mid-March indicated, much like the conversations that we're having here in Broomfield, that the real impacts of those big time ARPA dollars and the federal dollars and the stimulus dollars and the infrastructure dollars, when they go mid 2023, it's going to be pretty fascinating and not in a good way, what impact that means for those that are heavily reliant and have become heavily reliant since 2019 on those dollars. We are not.
How are they programming the one-time dollars? I haven't looked at the budget.
So that's just it. It's the antithesis of the structure that we are deploying here, which is they're gonna figure it out as they go. So a lot of new program implementations, a lot of increased personnel, not infrastructure related. But again, it's all, anytime that you say you have just such a short period of time to spend this money, it's just like if you don't need a sweater, right? And you go in and it's just such a great deal and you're like, oh my God, I just can't simply walk away from that because it's just so, but you don't need it.
And then you never wear it.
Well, that's just it, because there was no thought about that purchase, right? And so the fear from a human services perspective, from a mental health perspective, those implementations won't have an opportunity to be proven successful or not. So the default will be they aren't successful and we need to cut them, because 2 years is not enough time for any data to be gathered about success or failure. And so kind of part and parcel of state budgets in general, you just have a tendency to throw more money at it. Again, instead of that intentional piece. So
is there a time restraint on this money, like they're going to claw it back? Because there are some fears among some other local mayors I've talked to that what's up with that?
I think you're going to see that. I think you will see in the big 10 metro counties, the 5 that surround us in particular. It's just a different level of due diligence that we had the opportunity, because we like each other being a city and county. We didn't feel that pressure from our locals to say, give it to us, give it to us, give it to us, give it. And when you're in the throes of COVID, you're more inclined to say, oh my God, we need to do this, right? And so again, that discipline and cadence to be able to say, we're going to check all this out on the front end, and then we will deploy. I think you'll see two counties in particular be facing about a 5-year journey of what that clawback looks like.
Jefferson County, I ran into one of their commissioners and she said they hadn't spent their allocation yet. And she was worried about that clawback. But we're okay. Not
Absolutely.
To change.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Again, that's the putting the structure on the front end. So yeah, we're solid. So again, but it'll be fascinating. It's a little bit what we talked about last night at the kind of at that town hall meeting, and that is state budgets passing and whether it be infrastructure or not, when it bows down, so that the whole hit that the state is expecting a 20% shortfall in the end of 2023 into 2024. So again, that's what we've been talking about, right? It's not the resiliency piece, it's that buoyancy piece, and it's more difficult to get it when you're constantly in the hole. So the impacts for the state budget for locals is significant, because if they start these programs on these one-time dollars and our residents are benefiting from some portion of that, and then those programs go away, it becomes the impetus on the local governments to either continue to fund those programs, fill the gap in from our nonprofits. So again, it's a ripple effect. That's not just dollars, right? It's that the psychological programming of, especially when you put so much money into mental health, and it's like any other structure. We've talked about it before on this call, and that is, if you don't have the structure and you throw a bunch of money at it, that does not do anything for your structure. It just weakens the foundation upon which you were building. So throwing more money at anything, if you don't have the capability to staff, if you don't have the capability for the facilities, for the coordination, makes it so. Specifically, obviously, I'm talking about mental health. It's and then it becomes just a circular issue of, if we don't have it, we still have the money, so we spend more money in a different area that we didn't really talk about, so we can spend the money. And then people, again, they get reliant on it. So the new bills, just last night, oh no, that one's coming later on. So building greenhouse gas emissions, recently introduced, that's House Bill 362. Jean, talk a little bit about your experience yesterday.
Okay. So CC4CA had asked Lori and me to testify and split up these two bills. One was 1244 on the air quality monitoring, and one was 1355, which was related to sustainability. It was the producer responsibility bill. So Lori took the air quality monitoring, and that came second in the House Committee on Energy and the Environment yesterday. That was a long hearing in that committee, lots of industry opposition. And so anyway, she ended up testifying, I think about 8:30 p.m. She did her testimony remote, and CC4CA said we'd prefer the electeds to be there in person if possible. So I said, okay. So that was the third bill. I testified for producer responsibility at 11:30 p.m. And I think it
In
finished-
person?
Yes, yes.
Oh, Jean. Oh my goodness, thank you.
And it was good. I mean, there were other CC4CAs. There was the usual supporters from Fort Collins and Summit County and that Uray, so it was a good group to be down there with, but it was late. And so the air quality monitoring bill had a lot of amendments that really weakened it. And I'm not sure, I tried to get a feel for from Lori, and she's not even exactly sure, I don't think, how all those amendments are going to pan out, if, there's going to be much left to the bill. And there might be some more amendments coming forward on that. And the producer responsibility bill, they didn't end up voting. They took all the testimony. They didn't end up voting because there was an amendment introduced late. And so they're not actually voting on the producer responsibility bill until Wednesday, but CC4CA seems to think that'll still go okay. Yeah.
So that's again, that's always the path of these bills, right? And from the bill sponsors, having those upfront conversations to be able to say, so I'm just going to use the term that we use in lobbying, and that's neuter the bill. So at what point does it become so watered down? But usually the bill sponsors are, it doesn't really matter where the bill goes, to be honest with you, right? Because they will then reframe it to say, well, it's a start and we'll build on it next year. So whatever it is, let's just get it passed and then we can add in. So yes, the amendments to that bill, in my opinion, lessen the impact by about 70%. My guess is the likelihood to get those components back in is slim. You'll probably see another 10% that will lessen it further. House Bill 1363. This is the special districts. Anticipated this bill for the last 3 years. The amendments on this one are fascinating and constructive. So again, instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, they were able to come back and say, there's got to be a way to protect the taxpayer and the resident while still allowing the developers to build the residents because of the competing cost of housing, right? So they couldn't have this sweeping change. Excuse me. So that'll be fascinating, and it puts a lot of the control in the municipal governments with regards to kind of thumbs up, thumbs down, the board meetings, really thoroughly understanding from the requesting party to have a special district, what it is, where it is, what it looks like, similar to the conversations that ensued or the potential that we have ongoing, but it's after the fact, like with the RISTA, right? The metro districts up there twice as much as anywhere else, right? And so after a development is in place, the mill levies ratchet. Local government isn't aware because we don't have oversight, and certainly the city councils and commissioners aren't aware either until it gets to a certain point of where either you have a resident say, what the heck, or that developer is not able to meet the bond obligations with the existing mill levy and come back and say, we need to increase it because costs are higher, development is higher. So this is kind of those upfront, it has a lot of other restrictions and guardrails, more guardrails than restrictions, and there's a difference. It allows you still to have a lot of freedom and flexibility, but those guardrails is you're not going to have the kind of one-offs like Landmark that started the whole kind of crazy daisy metro districts. Again, the difficult part, Colorado, much like Broomfield, has become heavily reliant on metro districts, heavily reliant. And when you build your infrastructure based on someone else's funds and you don't have control over what that looks like, it's a gamble, particularly when you get to the population that certainly Broomfield's at. G, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I'm in the Broadlands and our mill levy's down to 10. Theoretically, these expenses are paid for, the mill levy should decrease. So how is this happening that they're adding on without oversight, like taking on more debt? I don't understand.
Well, And so it's, again, when you, if you're 10 years in on regular infrastructure, then you need maintenance. And by then the costs are exorbitant from what you're accustomed to paying, just like anything else, right? And so now a lot of these metro, they're struggling because what they, much like us, right? What we forecasted was going to happen didn't happen. So they couldn't pay those bonds off. So they refinanced, and now they're living in a house that doesn't have the same amount of equity. So in order to pay those bonds off, you have to either extend the life of the mills or increase the mills. So it's not stagnant, right? It's not a fixed picture when you go in. And that's Jean and I met this morning on the Broomfield Town Square, right? It's the how much risk are you willing to accept given the current circumstances that surround you? This bill allows the opportunity to continue that dialogue before they're locked in. Orphaned oil and gas wells that dropped last night. Jean, I don't know if you've seen that or not, but the link is in the chat here, the document that we just printed off. The bill is in there. There's about 500 wells that have been identified by COGCC. Everybody anticipates that number is significantly higher. Those are just the ones that they have notations on. And as we all know, the rule setting is going to affect how much the gas companies set aside to cover. The bill assesses, and this is just kind of laughable, and I shouldn't really say that, but I did laugh when I saw it. $125 a well or $225 well fee, depending on the various thresholds. And and we all know, right, that it's $100,000. Let me say that one more time. $100,000 to cap a well, and that was in 2019 costs, not 2022, 2023, 2024. And it does say that the fund can't grow larger than 100 million. That's a whole lot of 125s in there. But again, it's additional funds in the orphan well program that they've been greatly restricted on thus far. So it's a move in the right direction. 1361, another new bill that just dropped. It's the oil and gas reporting. After the state auditor found discrepancies in the meter data that caused unreporting of drilling productions, which then impacted severance tax, right? And so it's the ripple effect. So this requires companies to recalibrate their meters and COGCC to perform the work to ensure that the reporting is accurate, which of course means what? More FTEs to be on each one of these wells to make sure that the monitoring is in fact accurate. The bill doesn't doesn't address that. The state auditor, however, who is driving the bill, says that they'll do another audit in 2025 to ensure that the 2023 data that's being collected in order for them to assess the revenue distribution is in fact correct. If they find by the meters that the calculations are incorrect and thus the severance tax is incorrect, until they right the ship, the operators may be fined up to $1,000 a day until they recalibrate.
Well, that's really funny because I mean, that has implications for the mineral owner payments too.
Of course it does.
I mean, that's huge. The industry is not going to let that go by lightly. Let's say it that way.
No, and you know what? And so out of all the oil and gas bills that have passed in the last 3 years, and the ones that have been introduced, this one will be, to me, the most interesting to track, because it will give Colorado a really significant view into the Ukrainian situation. When we say we're stepping away from fossil fuels, when we're pumping up the EV charging stations, this ripple effect, not because of the funds, not because of the incorrect meters, not because of the incorrect calculations, but it's a structural bill that will really provide foresight into the direction that we're going to go for at least the next 5 years.
Any indication of how much underreporting took place in terms of, value?
We asked that about 2 weeks ago when the whole drafting was coming. And it depends on who you ask. If you ask the receiving end, it certainly wasn't enough to justify a bill or FTEs. But if you ask the state auditors, it was enough for them to take the time to draft the bill to say, we're going to have a redo in 2025. So it depends on the filter, right? So another criminal justice bill about intervention and deflection. It's another grant program. It's SB 196. It's the health needs. So really looking to the BHAs, the Behavioral Health Administration, to provide grants to local governments, Indian tribes, healthcare providers. It's another grant pot of money for folks that are in the system. Law enforcement's eligible. Again, it's another really huge lift, but they needed to put, and so this is very cynical. They need to put some of these big pots of money somewhere, and this is where a big pot of that money is going to go. Requires our county jails to report quarterly about the number of inmates whose Medicaid was suspended while they were incarcerated. There's been a lot of movement when I was contracting up until getting this job with Community Corrections. Large move afoot to extend Medicaid. So and that required the changing the definition between a inmate and an offender. So by changing those two definitions, sounds like semantics. It isn't, because that allowed when you are the difference between being incarcerated and being in jail, and that changes your Medicaid. So again, as soon as you go into DOC, you don't have Medicaid anymore. But when you're in that interim area, they couldn't decide if it should be a time frame. So if you're locked up for more than a year, you lose your Medicaid. And they wanted to switch that out so that when these offenders came back out, because while they're in, they're on our dime. So if something happens, we pay, or the individual jail or facility pays for it. As soon as they are released, they didn't want that gap of time. And that's why it was such a big deal for Broomfield being the first and not quite frankly, but only jail facility that we do 60 days of meds, whatever medication they're on right now. And then we do that warm handoff between our human services and our workforce center to provide that pipeline, kind of that continuum of care. Here you go. Administer of a community correction program to partner with the County Department of Human Services to facilitate the enrolling. So in other words, when you get out, so community corrections it's your last bastion of hope because you've screwed up a lot. It's your one last chance before you go to DOC, or on the back end, you're coming out of DOC and rather going right into the community. They say if you get off paper, if your number's up, if you hit your mandatory parole date, then you don't have to do any of that interim step. Community corrections is hard. It's very restrictive. You have to have a job. There's a lot of restrictions that go along with that. The bill also includes, if you go into community corrections, whether you're being diverted from DOC or you're coming out of DOC, that community correction facility now has to help you facilitate getting the Medicaid. So they have changed the definition between inmate and offender so that qualification is further reaching. These are the support positions Devin's been really good. He's sitting across from me because he had a meeting downstairs. So he's sitting up here with us today. We're going to go outside and check out all the really cool cars. There is that new electric Mustang that I've been telling Abby I'm really excited about. And then we saw the price tag and I thought, I'm thinking more of a 2002 Prius.
How much is the Mustang electric?
65,000.
Okay.
So it's, yeah. So we have a support position on the program to reduce ozone through transit, which is Senate Bill 180. A lot of folks are saying, you know, this requires a lot of RTD. For those that attended we had a question about, you know, Jennifer, how come you can't fire RTD? They're not a good partner and you should be doing something about it. And we kind of giggled and we said, Lizzie, if we could, we certainly.
You know what's
could.
funny?
What?
I have a noon lunch with Vince and that group, the RTD mayor's lunch. He does it.
Oh,
once a month,
good.
so I'll break up with them.
Yeah, just tell them, hey, we're now taking the 4% and we're gonna do, right, our own transportation piece to it. So again, it's fascinating when we're thinking that you know, that RTD is going to be able to wisely and thoughtfully administer yet another program. So hopes are that it certainly happens and that the funding stays consistent. That's administering that is, again, in theory, it sounds great. We'll see how well they do with that. We're also in a support position of oversight of chemicals used in oil and gas. Jean and Lori and I talked about, this is 1348. We talked about after the last council meeting. Again, it's a good start, right? But it doesn't talk about the why. It doesn't talk about any of the health impacts. There's no attachment to why would we have these lists? Why are they important? What is in them? What does that look like?
I'm testifying on that next Thursday. That's, that's Sierra Club.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Sierra Club wanted somebody from Broomfield to do that, and I'm doing that next Thursday.
Do they have good speaking points for that, Jean?
Not exactly, no. I'm have to work on that still. I mean, I've got some ideas, but I have to work on it.
I'll send you something.
Okay, that would be good.
Okay, yeah. It only took me about 20 minutes to do the ones for Lori. And so whenever I send those, I always think, oh God, there's just not enough in there. It's not gonna have enough juice. And then when she sent back, she goes, oh my God, this is so great. But so, yeah, I can knock that one out quick too.
Okay.
It might have a little snarky in there. So you might want to tone that down a little bit,
Okay.
but essentially what I just said is kind of what it doesn't take it far enough, but it's a
Yeah.
great introduction. We're certainly hoping there's a chapter 2 quickly following.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay.
And I'll include the health study, right? That you all are about ready to get your eyes on.
That's
In the
great.
next, in the next 2.5 weeks. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw what you sent to Lori for yesterday, and I
Yeah.
saw that you alluded to that health study already. So yeah, that's good. If, we can bring that up in the testimony next week then too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll include that in, I'll include that in there.
Okay, thanks.
Producer responsibility, Jean already talked a little bit about that. That's 1355. 1244, which is the toxic air contaminants, which was the testimony last night. So we have it. So 1024, that is the, and again, people from the URA perspective of holding schools harmless when we do URAs. In baseline, for example, in that URA, talking to the school about the benefits and the detriments, but that part of the tax increment financing that they would otherwise get, oftentimes the developer wants those portions given up in order to make the development. Broomfield Town Square will be no different. it's in the urban renewal area. That tax increment financing immediately goes to the school, but the conversation with the school that's facilitated, since we're partners with that school, is what the percentage that the developer would require for that. The reason I bring that up is CML is vehemently opposed to a bill. It's already passed the House, already passed the Senate. It does not impact us from the perspective of it's not money out of our general fund. It's money that we apportion or all we would have collected and then given back. So it's the use tax for schools. So CML wants to encourage, especially the home rule municipalities, to veto it. Nancy had weighed in, and it does set a precedence. And so folks are outside of the immediate impact. Folks, for home rule, once you start opening the door on home rule, the idea is it's a Pandora's box. And so people will come back to home rule saying, you're not really home rule, right? We're going to tell you that now this transfer is automatic. So on the sales and use tax, it's an automatic retention versus us stroking the check back to them based on the use tax. So all indications are the governor's going to sign it. Again, it's an education piece. So yeah, I mean, weighing in on it now. Nancy, I don't know if Abby got back to you and Christine. I mean, I don't want you guys to spend time going down that rabbit hole because it's done. So we need to figure out more about what it looks like for us moving forward. Again, it's CML, man, day late, dollar short. Right? Like, so now they're ringing the fire bell, but everybody's kind of standing there watching the craziness of it. For other communities, this will be a big deal. I mean, we'll probably have 4 more schools, including the STEM school that comes in the next 5 to 7 years, 8 years to accommodate the 20,000 more folks that will be here. Nancy, did you have the face like you wanted to, do you want to add something? No?
No, I think you're right. I mean, this is already going. Oh, I talked to the CML's general counsel this morning. They have, the governor knows the home rule municipalities view.
Yep.
And so we're not going to add anything to it to write another letter.
No, we are not. And again, these conversations should have occurred, 3.5 weeks ago. So again, to ring that fire bell at the 11th hour, yeah, I'm salty.
Sponsors,
today.
Jen?
I'm salty. I'm hungry.
That's okay.
And I'm tired from last night. So you gotta tone it down.
That was a lot.
right?
Last night was a lot, but it was good. It was who are the bill sponsors for this school? And
Abs, will you pull that up? Okay. And again, anything to it's about education, right? And so that multi-pronged approach to keep these schools whole and healthy. If the use tax on constructing these new schools, they want to have every single home rule or not, right? People talk about local control. Well, do the right thing with your local control. And you won't have somebody mandating it, right? So again, the education, anytime you see schools or education, it's hard to fight that, especially where they are financially and where they will be.
There's 4. Shannon Bird, Dan, I think you said
Your buddy, G.
Chris Hansen, and then Chris Colker.
that makes sense. That's a Shannon Bird kind of bill.
It is a Shannon Bird kind of bill, right?
Totally.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. To hell with local government or home rule. Yeah, that was very 10 years ago. So 1301. This one's interesting. Doesn't impact us. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. That's the ag. It's the controlled environmental agriculture facility as ag property. So for the local governments that have ag, it will be a pretty big deal. Power line trails, it's just requiring the utilities to inform the local governments of how to convert utilities corridors to power line trails. So it's just another emphasis to be able to say the indication, right? The ongoing reliance on any utility on fossil fuel generated will continuously be impacted by legislation, by home rule, by ordinance to say, you at least got to give us a heads up, right? It's that dig once that we can also have options to choose from. And so that's a pretty cool one, actually. Sustainability, 193, it's the air quality improvement investment. That includes industrial manufacturing. It's a clean air grant program. Senate Bill 51, that's the reducing emissions from the built environment. So it incentivizes the tax incentives for heat pumps and environmentally friendly building materials. That's part and parcel of the update, G, that we were talking about on the for the code updates. It's right in that same line. Gina, be familiar with this one, 1345, and it's a bipartisan, which is always really, it's super unique. Not the bill, but just even saying bipartisan anymore. To keep PFAS from water sources, and so again, the reason it's bipartisan is it's all the ag, right? Those rurals, they don't want that stuff in the water either. So it's a common enemy, which is pretty cool. Let's see, 138, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's all the GHG stuff. You guys will be hearing more about that, of course, when ACES and Andrew and Camille come for that update. Public safety, that fentanyl, man, I just can't get this fentanyl thing right, boy. And that people don't think it goes far enough, and others, others don't think it goes far enough either. I was going to say
yesterday, Metro Mayor's Caucus sent out 3 different versions of a sign-on letter because everybody had opinions on, how far it should go or not. I'm not even kidding. I'm just like, yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Where are we now?
Yeah. I mean, and so again, this got caught up, right? It's another one of those unintended consequences. But when you have a group of people telling you when you're doing legislation about the unintended consequences, they really aren't unintended consequences anymore. They fall into either I'm not hearing it, I'm not listening, or it's not important enough not to get this big, right? So this is a righting of the ship to the extent that they can. So, yeah, unlawful possession of any material, mixture, compound, preparation. Here's the operative piece that people are still forgetting about. More than 4 grams. So instead of that sweeping, don't do it. It's not good. It's a felony. In order to rise to that level, it has to be 4 grams, which is super counterintuitive, right? Because we know
2 grams is deadly.
Well,
it takes a couple of grains to kill someone.
So that's, the counter, why 4 grams? Well, again, and then you have all of these deaths that are occurring while this bill is going through. So I'm surprised that there's not fervor about that. Housing, more, the 180 million for affordable housing grants to nonprofits and local governments. It tiers it, which is pretty interesting. So the regional area median income cap for affordable rental projects are set at 80% in urban areas, 140% in rural counties, and then 170 for rural resort communities. So it's they're trying a targeted approach for those expenditures based on where you are, which, again, makes sense. So it's a big pot of money that folks will be vying for. Health and Human Services, to Devin's interest, the universal pre-K. Devin might want to talk a little bit more about this. Dan Casey participated on the BECC board discussion. It went to appropriations, and it's slowly moving along. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we talked about the universal pre-K, and one of the pieces of this is the. Let me
There's
know
an
if
echo.
you-
Yeah, one of you needs to mute.
Okay.
So one of the pieces with the universal PK is there has to be a local organization that is going to be the kind of the organizing unit. And so we talked, I'm on the board of directors for the Broomfield Early Childhood Council. And so we talked with the city and county to say, are you all going to intend on being this local connector? The city and county basically said no. The Broomfield Early Childhood Council was kind of the next, was one of the other pieces. We had a conversation. We said, we don't want to do this. We don't have the capacity to do it. And so at that point, we are in conversations with the two biggest school districts for Broomfield, the Adams 12, as well as BVSD, and saying, we need you all to be, we want to encourage you all to be the local connectors for this program. That creates some other complications, but for a lot of the system, it will create a lot of easiness. The Broomfield Early Childhood Council has said that we will continue to walk along with the school districts to ensure that there is support there for our non-public school, childcare, or not childcare, but preschool operators, to ensure that they don't fall through the cracks, ensuring that all of our Broomfield early childhood children continue to receive a high quality education. So we'll continue to walk alongside them, but this is a huge bill in terms of standing it up, in terms of what the infrastructure that's going to be needed. The biggest thing is that the short timeline is what's a little bit terrifying, is how quickly this needs to be set up. So we'll continue to do that, but it's been a great partnership with between all of these entities to kind of get everybody in alignment for at least who's going to take what role, and who's, I think that it feels like we're a little bit further ahead than some other jurisdictions in terms of those conversations. So we'll continue to have conversations with the school district to ensure that there is alignment in how this is going to be operated.
Devin, maybe I missed it. So if this passes, it takes effect when, did you say?
Yeah,
Does it
so
go into effect beginning of next year?
yeah, so the local organization has to be set up by July 2023.
Oh, wow.
So it's very quick in terms of how quickly, and then we're offering universal, pre-K that fall. So I mean, we're moving very quickly in terms of where we were with the universal kindergarten, the full all-day kindergartner. It happened probably about the same timeline, but the difference is that was all within the school district's jurisdiction and structure. So this is something that's adding kind of a different layer and a whole lot of other networks. So it's very quick in order to set this up. But again, this is the governor's priority to offer this to the state of Colorado. And there are going to be some growing pains along with this. But fortunately for here in Broomfield, we're establishing that communication, which should alleviate some of those problems here locally.
Huge. Yeah, that's huge. I'm going to turn my video on, everyone. Devin, are you still unmuted?
No, Jennifer is.
Okay, Jennifer's still muted, so you guys can hear me. Nancy, can you hear me? Okay, cool. So Jennifer just had to step out for 1 second, so I'm going to split my screen here. Hang on 1 second. There we go. So moving through, let's see, where are we? So other things, I'm not sure exactly what she was going to talk about next, but I'll just kind of run through. So we're talking about the modifications to Colorado Works program bill is kind of the next one, talking about increasing benefit amounts, expanding eligibility for specific populations, including, TANF will be changed to a basic cash assistance program only. And obviously Dan can probably speak more to that than I can. Also, the other one under that section is the regulation of, oh, and I'm gonna butcher that word, the Kratom processors. Passed by the Senate, introduced in the House on Tuesday, which would establish regulatory oversight of the processing and sale of Kratom. I'm saying it wrong, I'm sure. Then we're just finishing that section. Devin, finish up.
Kraton is, it's about time they regulate it. It's a pain modifier, but it's kind of like, they used to call it black mamba that you could get at the grocery stores. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
No, I didn't mean grocery, like gas stations, you could go in and get it pretty freely. So yeah, it's about time.
Got it. Okay.
Let's see. Paid family medical leave premium reduction reduces employer premium for the FMLA is what it's called now. Transfers up to 57.5 million for the program's fund. So they're putting a bunch of money in to offset the employer premium related expenses. So this is one of those one-time dollars though, right? And so then after that 57 million goes, which it will go and it'll go quickly. That's part of can't have your employees benefiting from that and then not pick up that cost. We certainly would not want to do that. And it's the number of people, and maybe this happened when I was younger and having kids. I don't totally remember. There's a lot of employees that are either on their second or having their first, a really large, I can think of 5 right off the top of my head. And so from a female perspective, it's really important that we're able to keep those, Nancy has 2. So there's 7 that I'm thinking of, keeping those mamas in the workforce so that there is not that gap should they choose to, and providing both of our economic development fellas, right? 2 weeks at home is not enough. 4 weeks at home is not enough, right? I had somebody tell me yesterday, don't mandate it, because sometimes I love coming to work and the baby's 3 weeks old. And I said, all right, well, so that's between you and your family, right? We're going to offer that, and whatever you decide to do is what you decide to do. The safe stops, governor signing that's 10/28. Bicycle and other non-motorized vehicles, youth delinquent prevention. It expands what's been around forever, the Tony Grampus. I know that Nancy and I are probably the ones that are most familiar with it. It's been around forever and ever and ever, and just puts more dollars in the pot for prevention, youth on the front end. Let's see, trying to be mindful of everybody's time. Pretrial diversions. That's moving forward. Oh, Juneteenth. So the state's going to be recognizing Juneteenth, as will we. Vanessa is working with the Juneteenth group to fly the flag in June, and we are adjusting the dollars. Abby, what else on that? I know you're the one.
I think Vanessa's working a little bit with, I think it's Boulder NAACP. They asked if we would do fly the flag on Juneteenth, and I think it's on a Sunday. So we're going to work with that. Obviously, we have some other celebrations we do in June as well. So trying to be mindful of just how we incorporate that, and then working with HR on just city and county holidays and how that works. If we obviously will recognize that as a city holiday. So
here's my question. So it says here, county, municipality, school district, or other local government follows the state holiday schedule, which I think we have like 5 more 4 more holidays than the state recognizes.
That'll be great.
Workload will increase, expenditures may increase to manage the changing schedules. So is it like the 4th of July to where if it's not falls on a Saturday, do we get a Friday?
If it's
No.
on so since it'll fall on a Sunday, the city will recognize the holiday
On Monday. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, so there you go. Let's see, provide counselor, childcare center tax credit. We talked about that one. Catalytic converter, we talked about that one. Crime prevention, behavioral health. I think we've talked about all the others on here. Did anybody have any specific questions or any more comments? Nope. Nancy, how's DC?
I sent Devin Aston and
I'm the only.
I ran out before this call and went to like this great little bakery deli and got this avocado chicken sandwich, which is
Nice.
amazing. And it's beautiful out. The session was good. I went to a really good session this morning on GPS and employees, tracking our employees and the Fourth Amendment. So it's fun, but DC is great. Man, I love it here.
Oh my
I just
God,
love the feel. Yeah. Walking around, hearing every language under the sun.
It's cool.
it's so
Yeah, and the
cool.
smells.
Yeah.
Nancy, is
Yeah.
the cherry blossom still there?
Not really. They're pretty
Oh,
much gone.
really?
But there's a lot of flowers. There's a lot of flowering going on. There's some. I was walking around a bit last night. There's some out, but they're
Nice.
mostly gone. Yeah.
Yeah, DC actually is most beautiful at night.
I love the city. So
Yeah,
easy to get around.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Heidi was saying, I said, let's just jump in this cab. She goes, you know what? I've never been in a cab. I was like, what? She said, I've never been on public transportation. I said, oh, sister, I said, it's not, she goes, in those movies I've seen it like I said, the L is not like that. That is not like the New York, I said, you have to experience it while you're here. So you got to take a cab, you got to take a bus, and you got to take and she defaulted and said, well, I'll just ride a scooter. And I said, well, okay, well, that's a start. Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's just so nice to fly into Reagan and take the metro and
It's
you're at
nuts.
your and
Yeah.
2 blocks and you're walking to your hotel. I
Yeah,
love it. I love
yeah.
it.
Well, cool.
Thanks,
Learned a
guys.
lot. Have a good time.
Thanks.
Everybody else
All
have a
right.
good weekend.
Have a
JJ,
great
thanks for
day.
coming last night and staying that whole time. It was cool. We sure appreciate it.
Absolutely, anytime.
All right, brother.